Hello, today I will be presenting memory as a way of knowing, and there was one famously written quote which reads, "Life is all memory except for one present moment that goes by you so quickly you hardly catch it going." So what is memory? Memory is where the mind stores and remembers information. It's what we think we know, and it's a sense of who we are as individual people. It may fail us, but it is the most reliable piece of information, though it's not the most credible at times, and it relies to preserve and recover information we've experienced throughout our lifetimes. So the way we can remember pieces of information, events, or occurrences is by creating separate categories in our mind or dividing information into chunks of information. And then we can also repeat sounds that we hear out loud. We can make associations with one thing to another. And we can also make a mental note in our minds. And wisdom, knowledge, information, and data, those are all used while speaking of memory. And our interactive question reads, why has the perspective changed when looking at early memories of ourselves? Explicit memory can be defined as easily and intentionally recalled or recited information. And examples of these are remembering a math formula for the math test, remembering a date in history, or memorizing one of your best friend's phone numbers. Those are all information that can be recited to another person. However, implicit memory can be defined as memory which is unconsciously remembered or automatically remembered. And it uses past experiences to remember these things without having to think about them. So it is enabled by previous experiences in your lifetime, no matter how long ago they have occurred. And examples of those types of memory include learning how to ride a bike, learning how to speak English, learning how to walk, learning how to write your name, those types of things. So the interactive question we have here is, what is your earliest memory? How confident are you in remembering this event by yourself rather than being told about the event? Failed memory can be defined as information forgotten which never made it to long-term memory in the first place. So failed memory example, what I like to think of this is I'm laying in bed, I'm thirsty for a glass of water, I go down the stairs, and once I reach the bottom of the steps, I forget why I walked down the stairs in the first place. This happens quite frequently, actually, to me personally. But other examples of these are remembering an answer to a test question or a name of a person that you've previously met that you're being introduced to a second time around. And then where you last placed your phone, your car keys, your wallet, any of those would they would be a example of a failed memory. False memories, these are memories that the brain has put into place because of that present moment. We can remember things that happen through false memories, and memories occur in a different way. So how can false memories occur? False memories can occur through childhood events, through drugs can impact false memories, such as drugs and alcohol, and then suggestions and misattribution. So one example of a false memory, let's say a woman was drinking before she remembered to do something very stupid that she was going to regret the next day. So this woman, because she has alcohol in her system, her memories are not going to be as reliable as someone who was sober that night. So that's where false memories come into play. And false memories, they can be you can question yourself for, did I really do this, or did I really just think about doing this? And that's where false memories come into play. And here we have an image that says, did that really happen? So for our next slide, we will be discussing illusions. A famously written quote reads, "Memory is woefully easy to screw up," by Julia Shaw. And illusions can be defined as when memory deviates from the remembered past. It can also be distortion or change, and it usually happens to fill in the gaps. So how this can massively affect everyone. So once there was a Watergate situation. Oops. Let me just. There we go. So the Watergate situation was a situation where President Nixon and his administration were in a bit of troubles. Dean said he and Nixon had conversations that would incriminate Nixon. They recorded them as well, but everything he said was false, and Nixon said that they never had those conversations. So here's where illusions play. And another example is incriminating conversations, such as this one, and it was not real, it did not match up with what actually happened, but instead it was an illusion. So our next slide speaks of emotion, and emotions play an interesting role in when it comes to memory. So emotion can be associated with a particular memory in the ways that memory dependence can be defined as remembering is easier when your mood matches the mood you're in while learning the information. The stronger the emotions aroused, the greater the effects on memory. Memory congruence can be defined as one can remember certain thoughts based on the emotions that they feel. So I use the example of, as we're walking through Disneyland, they put these fake scents around the village or the places that you're walking, and it kind of triggers you to be hungry as an emotion because you're smelling freshly baked cookies, or you're smelling churros, or you're smelling some type of sweet food. And Disneyland uses this as matching a positive mood, which triggers you to want to purchase some of the food that they sell there. And this is the way which emotion can be used. And emotion speaks of nostalgia, which I'll be discussing in the next slide. But nostalgia is a sentimental longing or wistful affection for the past, and thus certain smells or seeing certain things can trigger memories, which would then trigger an emotion associated with that memory. The next slide speaks of language, and language is a method of human communication, spoken or written in a structured, conventional way. Retrospective memory is where the context to be remembered, including people, words, events, are in the past. And nostalgia, what we spoke of previously, is a sentimental longing and can be associated with happy personal associations. So the role that language plays in memory is not as strong of a way of knowing. Language can be too easily turned into false memories. For example, if I were to reinstate an occurrence which happened previously, but I got the conversation mixed up, and then my conversation traveled to another conversation, and then that's how gossip begins to start and how false information begins to spread. So prospective memory is defined as a form of memory that involves remembering to perform a planned action or recall a planned intention at some future point in time. And prospective memory connects with the picture on the failed memory slide with the sticky note here. Prospective memory, that's the ways where we are dividing our information into different chunks so that it's easier for us to recall long term. So here the image reads, "You have to study for this test, dummy. You can't just put a memory stick in your ear." So sometimes when we're memorizing, we can use language and we can repeat certain things in our minds just so that it'll stick to the back of our heads. So thank you for watching this presentation.